Hey, what's up, metal and heavy music fans? It's Flight of Icarus again with MetalTrenches.com, and today we're talking about Tribulation and their new album Where the Gloom Becomes Sound via Metal Blade Records. And hey, if you like to be kept up to date with the best and brightest metal bands and albums from the underground and above, then stick with me by hitting that subscribe button down below. Now, unless you've been living under a rock for the last few years, Tribulation is the Swedish Grammy award-winning band who took the metal world by storm with their 2015 album Children of the Night, following up that critically acclaimed Ode to Darkness with Down Below in 2018. Theirs is a sound that fuses elements of rock, doom, goth aesthetic, and a touch of black metal that really seem to bring a fresh vitality to the scene and offer plenty of crossover potential for fans that might not otherwise listen to heavier music. For this fifth album, the band state that they really doubled down on their fascination with elemental magic, as well as pulling many other influences from Swedish folk metal to Morbid Angel. The title was inspired by German darkwave artist Sopor Aeternus and the Ensemble of Shadows with the line, "Down further down where the gloom becomes sound on the cell where your love might be found." Interestingly, the bulk of the material was written by guitarist Jonathan Hultin, who actually left the band just prior to its release. The record opens on a very solid foundation with the powerful build of In Remembrance. Given its slow, tension-building intro and initially minimalist focused on ambience alongside Johannes Andersson's always delightfully raspy vocals, it almost feels more like a straight-up black metal track, at least until the more heavy metal-inspired riffs really kick in a little further on. At this point, it evolves into something much more melodic and arguably even more massive alongside some killer rock and roll solos. These new wave of British heavy metal style riffs show up frequently and quite triumphantly throughout the album, but perhaps most pronounced on the track Daughter of the Djinn. This one blows the previous song out of the water with the amount of hooks going on. It's interesting to me how well Tribulation managed to balance their usual dreary, melancholic atmosphere with these otherwise energetic, sometimes even Opeth-like guitars. It's quite the tightrope walk to pull these things off at the same time, but here it's absolute perfection. Alongside the drums, they give this constant driving sense of immediacy, and I also adore the two-part harmonies towards the end. This track quickly became a highlight of the album and is perfectly placed around the midpoint to really keep it moving along as a whole. There's also some really great classic rock-inspired guitar work over the course of When the Gloom Becomes Sound, with lots of hammer-ons and pull-offs particularly lighting up tracks like Inanna and Leviathans. It's like listening to Led Zeppelin if they were bitten by Lestat de Lioncord and joined the Dark Brotherhood.
Psst. Hey, I know who you are. Hater cities.
If you ask me, this is modern Tribulation at their finest, and these tracks in particular are more easy favorites that you'll certainly keep coming back to. But really, there are more highlights on this album than downtime, from the cool organ intro and shimmering guitars of Elementals, to the appropriately named Dirge of a Dying Soul with its slow, doomy vibes and very retro use of synth. Then there's the proggy funeral Pyre, which is just plain awesome with, you guessed it, more riffs for days. Another fun fact from the band, the kind of theremin sound on this one is actually just another guitar effect. Now that said, I don't love every second of the proceedings, most notably and likely divisively, Hour of the Wolf strikes me as kind of boring and an odd choice for a single. It definitely nails the gothic atmosphere and vampire rock overtones, but it's also the most repetitive track in the listing. I'm sure that bigger fans of this sort of thing are going to eat it up, but I just look for a little bit more compositional variety regardless of the genre, making it my least favorite by a pretty wide margin. Although even that one is growing on me. But overall, I was actually surprised at how much I enjoyed this new entry in the Tribulation saga. As I said in my previous retro review, I actually prefer the at the gates for the throat melodic death metal approach of their debut album The Whore to the more popular albums of the last few years. But thanks to some really killer guitar work and always oppressive atmosphere, where the gloom becomes sound made for a strangely enjoyable listen while still managing to live up to its misery-soaked title. As such, I give it a 9 for enjoyability. Again, I soaked in the sorrow and love how the band seemed to have mastered spinning it into some really engaging tunes. It honestly only gets better with each listen. I give it a 9 for musicianship. I wasn't expecting anything particularly inspiring on this front after hearing Hour of the Wolf, but Jonathan in particular really brought the hooks on this one along with some killer solos, and it all comes together with the other members to near perfection. I'm curious how the band will press on without him. And I give it an 8 for innovation. If you're familiar with Tribulation already, you'll more or less know kind of what to expect from this one, but I feel like it represents just enough of a step towards mastery and stand out from what we usually hear to warrant the additional point. So an 8.7 and a B+ for Tribulation and When the Gloom Becomes Sound. Get it again via Metal Blade Records. Y'all, thanks as always for watching, and let me know down in the comments what you think of this album and your favorite Tribulation album so far. Also hit that like button and stick around because I got plenty more album reviews, tier lists, interviews, and more metal content, so please do subscribe if you have not already. Also chat with us on Discord and support us on Patreon. But that'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.